And now I hope we will manage to connect to Sabrina Dietz, who studied applied environment at the applied environmental in the Norwegian University of Applied Sciences, and she's worked for management of carnivores in and Czech Republic. She is currently working as the political expert for the Federation of the Hunting and Conservation, and she just in fact represents the interest for the large carnivores protection. I just wanted to say that in fact lot of experts promised to give papers in the area of large carnivores protection. So Sabrina Dietz remained as the only one among those we tend to invite. I just wanted to highlight that the large carnivores protection is quite favorite. And I have to say that seminars in the European Union are quite frequent, more frequent than seminars on the farmers' aging, which is quite imbalanced. Nevertheless, it is important to protect large carnivores. So can we connect? Thank you very much.
Good morning. I'm trying to share my screen. Okay, thank you very much for inviting me. As I was already introduced, I'm working for FACE, the European Federation for Hunting and Conservation, which is based in Brussels. And a short background introduction to FACE, which was established in 1977, and it's a non-profit NGO. And we are representing all national hunting associations from Europe in the European institutions. So we are the voice of 7 million hunters, and we are trying to create the best possible context for hunting in Europe on a political and on an environmental level. But yeah, today I will talk about the return on the wolf and the challenges connected with it. So as you might know, the wolf was extinct in most of European countries, so almost extinct, and only after the 1970s, when the persecution pressure of wolves decreased, and when more and more people moved from the countryside to the cities, only then the wolf populations started to increase again. And nowadays, based on the IUCN assessment from 2018, we have 13 to 14,000 individuals in the European Union. And if we look at a European level, we have around 17,000 individuals. So IUCN recognizes in total 9 biologically wolf populations in Europe, which belong to one meta-population. According to the IUCN Red List, the wolf is least concern both on European level and in the EU. And the wolf is also protected under European legislation, which is the EU Habitats Directive. So there, the wolf can be either in Annex 4, so there it's strictly protected, or it can be in either Annex 5, where species, so the wolf, it can be subject to management. And yeah, as you can see here, this is the map where you can see the 9 wolf populations. And what is quite interesting to see is that 8 of the 9 wolf populations in Europe are shared by 1 or more countries, except of the population on the Italian peninsula, which is not yet connected to other countries. We also have the example of Finland, where the population is shared even with a non-European country. So there's lots of migration between Russia and Europe concerning the wolf. Now, looking and focusing on the Czech Republic, we know that the wolf is there in Annex 4, so it's strictly protected. According to the latest Article 17 reports, the Czech government reported a maximum of 80 individuals. So every 6 years, the member states have to report the conservation status of species and habitats to the European Commission. And the latest report was covered the period from 2013 to 2018. The Czech government reported an unfavorable conservation status for wolves, but they also reported that there's an improving trend in range and population and a stable trend in habitat. Early this year, the Czech Republic has approved a wolf management plan, which is very important to get a certain kind of flexibility according to EU guidance documents. Looking at the map of the Czech Republic and the presence data that were reported by the Czech government, you can see that most of the population is in the border regions, and they are all part of a bigger population. So, for example, in the north of the Czech Republic, the wolf packs are part of the Central European lowland population, which is mainly in Germany and Poland. You have also some influx from the Alpine regions via Austria and from Slovakia, which is the Carpathian population. But of course, with the return of the wolf, also some challenges come along. And the stakeholders which are most impacted by the return are, of course, the farmers and the livestock breeders. According to a study based on 19 EU countries plus Switzerland and Norway, 19,500 sheep have been killed already by wolves in only 4 years. And of course, the European Union provides financial resources to mitigate these conflicts. And the most used tools are electric fences and guarding dogs, but they are not, you have to keep in mind that these tools are not working for every type of landscape or situation. Also, compensation payments are often used, but they are not satisfying enough. So hence the farmers are the stakeholders that have usually the most negative attitude towards wolves when you look at social studies. But of course, not only the farmers are impacted, but also the hunters. Wolf packs can have an intense impact on local game populations, but hunters are also influenced because of a reduced revenue because of the wolf presence. So many hunters, especially those who hunt with hunting dogs, they don't want to use the hunting grounds where wolves are present. So the loss of hunting dogs is the main problem at the moment hunters face, mainly in Scandinavia, but also in other European countries. So for example, in Finland, there were only 25 hunting dogs killed, many more injured, and that was only in this season starting in August 2020. Another big problem is if small-scale farmers with an extensive livestock farming have to stop farming because of the wolf. So for those, the wolf is most of the time an additive pressure on the livelihood of those. But when they give up this small-scale farming and the grazing stops, certain habitats, especially in mountain areas, for example, like the alpine regions, those habitats disappear, and the stop of the grazing may lead to reforestation of open fields. The habitats, the meadows, for example, in the mountainous areas are quite often also protected under EU legislation. So there you have a conflict between two objects that are protected. So you have the wolf on one hand, which is in many areas strictly protected, but you also have these habitats, which are very important. And the same principle is also with other species and that are, for example, endangered or strictly protected, or also when the population is rather small, so the wolf can have a big impact. But in fact, for these cases, more scientific research has to be done and is needed to collect more data on the impact of wolves on ecosystems in Europe. So now these conflicts, they of course need to be mitigated, and the most important tool is quite often education and communication. So the wolf in Europe is such a flexible animal. It can adapt easily to our landscapes that are modified and sometimes highly fragmented. So the acceptance of large carnivores by the people is the most crucial factor. But therefore, the rural voices need to be heard, and especially due to the situation that conflicts are so diverse. They depend on the climate, on landscape, and, for example, also on the socio-economic situation of a certain country or region. So solutions have to be found locally and regionally and cannot be done only on a national level or even European level. And then also management and conservation decisions have to be transparent. There needs to be a communication between authorities and the stakeholders. So conflicts are also often solved on a political level, and therefore FACE and many other European hunting associations have certain requests. For example, we want to change the conservation status of certain populations if they have reached a favorable conservation status, which is the goal of the EU Habitats Directive. Because once populations have reached this level, management is needed. And as I already said before, we need flexible solutions and flexible implementations that also have to be done on international and European level. Furthermore, there needs to be a greater recognition of Article 2 of the Habitats Directive. So the goal of this is the conservation status is favorable, but cultural aspects or socio-economic situations have to be taken into account. And as I already told before, many of the wolf populations are shared by one or more countries. So transboundary management plans need to be more promoted by the European Union. But of course, hunting can also be a management tool to mitigate conflicts. If hunters give wolves a value, and not only a financial value, but also an intrinsic value, then hunters and people from the rural countryside see the wolf as part of nature. And also, if there's certain lethal management, certain prey species can be preserved. And when the wolf has a value for hunters and the rural countryside, hunters are more likely to report illegal actions of illegal killing. And a limited and regulated legal harvest can, in certain situations, decrease the need for illegal killing and gives the rural countryside and the people living there a certain kind of empowerment. And that is very important to mitigate conflicts and to decrease illegal killing. That was it from my side. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have questions, please ask them now or write me in an email later. Thank you very much.
Very much to Mrs. Sabrina for her statement. And because we are now connected, let me start with questions to Mrs. Dietz. Can we see the question on the screen? And yes, I'd like to ask you about your opinion about the presence of wolves in the Czech Republic. Are they beneficial or are they harmful? This is an anonymous question, and of course it's a key question, even though it seems to be like formulated naively. So what is your view about that? We know that today on the offensive are protectionists of wolves, whereas farmers are in deep defensive, or on the deep defensive, and therefore they have some legitimate interests which should be taken into account. So what is your opinion about this?
So first of all, the wolf is not a direct threat to humans. So there have been no cases or where wolf is directly harming humans. But of course, it's a huge pressure on the local and on the rural countryside, which needs to be taken into account. So the voice and the fears of farmers to lose sheep or other livestock, that needs to be taken seriously and also taken into account to management decisions. Most of the time, people who say the wolf needs to be strictly protected come from the cities, and they don't live closely to the wolf. So that is an important point to know, that people who live directly in contact with the wolves, they have of course different opinions, but their voices need to be heard when it comes to the management of wolves.
Thank you very much. Next question. And that is, how can we achieve the situation that actually wolves are again get shy and avoid meeting livestock? The farmers that I talked to complain that wolves, as intelligent animals, know that they are not threatened. And unlike countries where they are hunted, like for example in Turkey, Iran, but also in some parts of Europe, they actually avoid or circumvent human dwellings and only sporadically attack livestock, whereas in this country, where there is a there's high population density, human population density, and quite intensive economic activity, they are no longer shy, the wolves. So it's possible to encounter them in the forest. They do not escape when they see you, and when they are close to sheep. So the breeders just throw stones at them, but they just actually step aside and look at them from a distance of 20 meters, being in comfort. So what can we do for the wolves to change their behavior, to return to being part of the nature really in the past?
Yes, that is a very good point. So wolves need to learn again that sheep and livestock is a high-risk prey. So at the moment, for them, it's connected with low risk. So they rather go to the farms than hunting in the forest, because they know it's easily and it's not connected to a risk. So wolves need to learn again that approaching farms is connected with a big risk for their livelihood and for their wolf pack. So hunting is, of course, an option that would work to learn them again. Okay, stay away from human settlements and stay away from farms.
Next question. It's ironical remark rather, and that the EU great emphasis is laid on the welfare of livestock. And how is it about sheep that are torn to pieces by wolves? Well, I wouldn't even raise this question, but we must realize that this thing needs to be taken seriously. And the last question, how can we achieve a situation that the wolf population do not spread into densely populated agricultural areas? We were taught in the European Parliament that people must get used to wolves. And a very good example of coexistence with wolf, it is shown wolf actually was running around a city in Italy, running in streets. What is your perception of this?
Yes, in fact, that's a big problem also on the European level, because the European Commission confirmed that the natural range of wolves is also close to human settlements, and that's a big problem that we as hunters or as stakeholders need to address to the European Commission. We need a law or a guidance that says, okay, wolves, they do not belong close to human settlements, so derogations can be easily given to take away certain animals that cause over and over problems going into the villages, going very close to the human settlements. So to summarize, it's a problem on the level of the European Union that they acknowledge that the natural range also, that human settlements also belong to the natural range of wolves, and that needs to be changed, and we're working hard for it to get a certain kind of understanding that people on the rural countrysides don't want to have wolves close to their own homes.
Máme tam ještě další otázku.
There's one more question.
Já bych předtím ještě, než ji přečtu,
But before reading it, let me remind that the lecture on wolves in the European Parliament, and it was the conference hall was crowded by farmers, but they looked very defensively. So an expert got a question from a German MP: what should be the number of wolves? So that the danger can be prevented, that they would degenerate genetically. And the expert answered, as big as it can be. Or the number should be as high as it can. So the question, how to balance off the number of wolves, that is to set the balance between the amount of damage on the farmer's side and the beneficiarity, the wolf's beneficiarity. How can we set the compensation? We know that costs dramatically rise as much as the damages rise year by year, and the farmers complain that they get compensation very late, and that very often such damages are not recognized and they did not receive proper compensation.
Yes, so the goal of the European legislation is that each population or assessment of wolves reaches favorable conservation status. So that means that both habitat, range, and populations can be maintained for the future. And there it's in fact important that countries and national governments set the so-called favorable reference values together with the stakeholders that are involved. And once this value is reached, the population can be set to a favorable conservation status. And once it has reached this status, a better flexibility can be taken by member states, so they have the chance to be a bit more flexible. That is the solution according to the European Union, but it's very important that stakeholders are active, so that the member states or the governments set this favorable reference value together with all the stakeholders that are influenced, so that it is not a solution that like in Poland, where they say, okay, we need as many wolves as possible. That's not a solution, and that is not wanted. Also because of Article 2 of the Habitats Directive, where it says, okay, that the interests, the cultural interests and the interests of the rural countryside needs to be taken into account when in the conservation of management and management of wolves. So their interests are also important, and they should be recognized.